G'day everyone. For today's video we are going to be doing a deep dive into weapons. So I'm specifically going to be going into Fragged Empire 2 weapons, but some of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about will be applicable to the other Frag titles. I could do a huge video on this in terms of like maths and graphs and things like that, and we will get into a little bit of nitty gritty. But I want to treat this video as like a large primer, basically. The sort of information that'll help you get a deeper understanding for some of the depth, some of the design philosophies that I'm aiming for, and this will help you as a GM or as a player create better characters and NPCs, and also particularly if you have an interest in homebrewing. And I am a massive fan of homebrewing RPGs. I mean that's effectively how Fragged works. So for you guys who don't know the story, originally Fragged was a homebrew of the hero system because but I grew up in a culture of doing lots and lots of homebrewing. That's what we did. We didn't do adventure modules or stuff like that. We're always making our own settings, our own worlds, and we're always tweaking things to fit the sort of campaigns that we were running. Anyway, let's jump into it. So we're going to be having a look at weapons. Cool. So let's start off with some basics. Firstly, how do you make weapons? So this is a big thing in let me just see if I can move that over so my picture's not hiding it. Okay, so Fragged has a huge amount of customizability. There, tongue-tied. Anyway, so to create a weapon or an outfit, you start off with your base item, so let's say SMG. Then you apply a variation to that, like either like a plasma or a rail or Gauss, and it becomes, a plasma SMG or a Gauss SMG. It's like a template that you put over it. So you just put one variation per weapon type, and then you can add as many modifications as you want after that. So like, targeting lasers and personalizing and little tweaks and things like that. Anyway, we'll jump into the specifics of that. But yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the base weapons. So this here on the left are all of the base weapons in Fragged Empire 2, and you'll notice that this is a massively trimmed down list from first edition. So first edition was 2 pages in the core rulebook, and then the other books added more on top of that. So this is like less than half of the number of base weapons. But you'll notice that a lot more effort's been put into the variations. So this, for example, is the gun variations and then the gun modifications here. The reason for having such a trimmed down base item list is I want every single item to feel important, like it's got its place. And I'm going to be jumping into doing a look at each one of these in particular. But for now, we're just doing a quick overview. This here on the right is a bunch of pre-made weapons. So these are just very solid choice for low-level characters, or even just like they're just pre-made stuff. If you don't want to bother about base weapons and add a variation and blah blah blah, you can just select one of these and you're good to go. Then the other quick thing to consider just before we go into the specifics is I just want to note here, so this is your combat sheet. So, and here you've got your spot for your weapons. Everybody has a improvised weapon. So this, I'll just zoom in. So an improvised weapon can represent a huge number. It's basically like if you're hitting someone with your fists, or you're throwing a rock at someone, or the butt of your rifle, you use these improvised stats. And this is fairly standard, and it comes here with 3 sort of default little modifications in there. So if you're using your fists, or a weapon like a large weapon like the butt of your rifle, or a rock or something like that, or a thrown object, and it just slightly modifies the hit and the damage and things like that. Another big thing that's worth taking into consideration with your weapons are your actions. Now, we're not going to go into the actions into a deep at the moment, but primarily you're looking at snapshot and sighted shot. So basically, snapshot is move and attack, and sighted shot is stay still and attack. So sighted shot is a lot more accurate because you add your reflex to your to hit and your focus to your range, and then both of these add your focus to your endurance damage in Fragged 2. But then snapshot lets you move as well. Okay, so keep that in mind. So when you're looking here at endurance damage, really low values, always you're adding your focus to it all the time, and to an average's focus is 3. Cool. Okay. The other thing to keep in mind quickly for FE2 is you can have 3 weapons per character. One of those doesn't have to be a companion, but could be. You can only have 1 companion, and it's highly recommended that one of those weapons has the sidearm keyword. So the sidearm keyword is a new keyword that's coming into Fragged Empire 2. So, and what the sidearm does is your first weapon with the sidearm keyword. So let's just have a look here at your pistol. So you see it's got the sidearm keyword. Your first weapon with the sidearm keyword costs you -1 resource. And that could be a pistol, or a grenade, or I should know these off by heart, but yeah. Or the combo alt fire mode, so it's like an alternative attack with your weapon, bayonets and melee weapons, or there is like one arcane weapon that's also a sidearm, like raw power. So basically low cost things. And this is to encourage that basically every character should have a secondary weapon. So you might have your big assault rifle, but then you got your pistol as a backup, or a grenade as a backup, and your choice of sidearm becomes important there. Now, the reason why I've included sidearm keywords is I've removed variations that have a minus resource cost. There's none of those in 2nd edition, pretty much. There's a couple of tiny little things that can do that, whereas they are much more prevalent in 1st edition. You can make 0 cost, particle pistols and stuff like that. So instead, we've done away with that, and we just put a sidearm keyword. And the reason for this, the design philosophy, is I'm trying to hold people's hands a little bit more to have a backup weapon. Okay. Cool. So let's jump into some of these, and we're just going to go through each base weapon really quickly, and then after we've gone through each base weapon, I'm going to then touch on home brewing weapons and the values of these stats. Let me just it's trimming off the side. Let me see if I can just adjust this a little bit so we're not trimming off the left hand side. Okay. Let's do it. Okay, so firstly, let's have a look at the pistol. Okay, so the pistol is the classic sidearm weapon. Look, it's range, it's got okay to hit, okay range. Its big drawback is it's only got 3 crit damage when average armor is 3, so you're going to be struggling to really hurt people or finish them off. It's not particularly good at causing strong hits, but you pull it out, you go pop, 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 and it's always going to be a reliable sort of light damage dealer. But you do gain like an extra crit damage bonus during surprise rounds and stealths, so that's aids sneaky characters. You can use a pistol as a primary weapon if you build your character right. So either sneaky, or you're going to want to add a variation that increases that crit damage. So there's a couple of particularly good variations. So let's have so you can have all different sorts of pistols, but I'm just going to focus on, if you're going to focus on pistol being your primary weapon, you're probably looking at anything that gives +1 crit damage. So a radiated is good for that. Rail, bit circumstantial. Antimatter turns into a solid sort of, you'll never miss with that thing basically. But the real one that you're probably wanting to have a look at is things with the puncture strong hit are also a really good choice. So this is deals a crit damage that always deals at least 1 damage no matter their armor. So you got the crit damage 3, but you go chip, 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 chip. Okay? The other thing is you'll notice that next to the pistol, it's got this little black dot. A little here. And what that represents is that there is a specific trait that goes with this item. Okay? And the one in this instance is called double tap. So let's just do a quick search. This is the best way to find your way around PDFs, by the way. So double tap here is your first critical hit per attack with a pistol causes an additional critical hit. So critical hits are normally limited to once per attack, but with this very strong trait, all of a sudden your pistol is causing twice as many. So if you do a puncture attack, you've now done 2 puncture attacks, or you've got a crit 4 weapon, you now deal 2 crit 4 hits. So that effectively doubles its strong hit chance. Okay, and that turns it into a perfectly viable primary weapon. But for most people, the pistol's going to be the backup. Just really easy. Doesn't matter about your distance or the circumstances. It's always going to be able to apply its damage. Okay, so next weapon, submachine gun. So this is the quintessential I love to roll lots of dice weapon. So it's got 4d6 as its base attack, so more dice represents more bullets, and FE2 deals moderate sort of endurance damage. It's got little +1 bonus there, but it's only got crit damage 3. Again, big drawback. But the other thing it's got is it has a thing called munition boost +1d6. So munition boost is a keyword that if you spend munitions on this weapon, you gain this. So if you spend 1 munition on SMG, to get +1d6, you then instead get +2d6. But if you spend 2 munition, you still only get that +1 bonus, so it only turns into a +3. So anyway, so a submachine gun is going to be normally attacking with 4d6 dice, and if you dual wield this thing, so you can dual wield it with the gun modification here as a classic one that can be easily applied to one-handed weapons, is you add an extra d6 and you gain an extra endurance damage. So that then turns that into just a monster in terms of the number of dice, like 76 attacks. So you're rolling lots and lots of dice, so your chance of hitting is very high. And in Fragged Empire, hit chances have always been high. Okay? but what you're hunting for is strong hits. So that's rolls of 6s. So with a submachine gun averaging rolling 66, you're going to get a strong hit per attack, but it's because it's only got crit damage 3, it's not good at causing attribute damage, but if you apply things that do other strong hits, so I mean, puncture is a good choice if you're wanting to just deal more, attribute damage with them, but other really good choices are, for example, burn, which applies general damage to your target, so 3 general damage at the start of their turn until an appropriate skill roll of 12 is performed on them. Another one is disrupt, which lets you sort of drain munitions or give them negative strong hit chances and stuff like that. So you either, with an SMG, you want to build for either a specific strong hit option or go heavy into endurance damage. So you're already dealing that 1 plus your focus. If you're dual wielding, it's 2 plus your focus, and you add the right variation, it could be 3 plus your focus. So if you've got like a focus 4, then all of a sudden this thing's a 7 endurance damage beast. Okay, and so that's how an SMG wants to be used. It's a fun weapon if you really like to roll lots of dice and reliable, but you're not going to be dealing the most attribute damage. Next one is the shotgun. Okay, so the shotgun, as you can see here, fairly average stats. It's got lower base range. It gives really good endurance damage, but it's got 2 things that go for it. So one is it can be a gun or a shell weapon. So that means you can add a gun variation or a shell variation. And within your first range increment, you gain strong hit 5 or 6. So you're rolling strong hits and you on a 5 or a 6 rather than just a 6. So this means with a shotgun is excellent for causing strong hits and good for dealing endurance damage. And it's got some lot of flexibility in how you can build this thing. So same thing as a submachine gun, you're going to want some sort of special strong hit option with you. So because it's only got a base crit damage of 3, I recommend burn. Burn's always one of my favorite ones. Now the other thing is that you'll notice that it gains this within its first range increment, and it's got a range of 2, but with sighted shot, and if you've got a good focus, you increase that. So it could be 2 plus your focus, so like a 5. Very reasonable. Chance of an opponent being within 5 spaces of you. The other way to build it, good thing about having a focus build means it also ups your endurance damage, which this thing's very good at. The other thing is you could also be a movement-based character and use snapshot. So you get to move and shoot. So you move and you're basically blasting people in their faces with this thing. And being gun or shell, you select that one, and that means you can either add these gun variations or you can add shell variations. So that opens up like a whole nother set of things that you can apply. Okay. Now, your choice of gun and shell is important because you'll find that gun variations tend towards accuracy, so more bonuses to hit and range, whereas shell variations tend towards damage. So you're looking at plus endurance damage and splash. So you can make a splash shotgun. Okay? Okay, so the next weapon here is the rifle. So the rifle, you'll immediately notice it's abysmal 2d6 attack roll dice, but it's got +2 to hit, fantastic range of 6, and it's got crit damage of 4, so we're talking this is medium damage now. And it always gains strong hit on 5 or 6, and So what this means is with a rifle, normally you're going to be spending an extra munition to roll an extra dice. You can also add the Gauss variation, which just gives you a default +1 d6 with your attack. But if you're building reflex high character, which reflex adds to your to hit chance, you can risk it with these 2d6 attacks. So the rifle scales really well with bonus dice, okay? Because it calls that strong hit on 5 or 6, so every dice is like the equivalent of rolling 2 dice in terms of your strong hit chance. So the rifle is a fantastic finisher. This thing's going to be your damage dealer. It's going to be applying, it's excellent at finishing opponents off, and yeah, you're going to get lots of glory with a rifle, okay? But watch it, because you're going to need to reload a little bit more frequently than necessarily you'd like to. Okay, the next weapon here is the assault rifle. You notice it's got no keywords, 4d6 hit, 4 range, 1 endurance, 4 crit. These are just solid numbers, nothing fancy. And you'll notice that it's got this little icon next to it here. And as talked about in a previous video, so this square icon means rules light. So if you're a person that's not wanting much fluff, or just reduce a little bit of mechanical depth for your character, assault rifle is your choice. And when we get to homebrewing, we're going to talk more about the assault rifle, is that this is considered the base middle range weapon. And it's a good choice. You can apply any gun variation to this thing and it'll work. You can build any sort of character. You can be movement based, focus based, reflex based. Like you can do anything. The assault rifle is always going to work. Okay, now these are all fairly straightforward. The guns and stuff starting to get a little bit more complex as we go down. So let's start having a look at some of these. Okay, so the grenade is now, so it's got the sidearm keyword, and it's got splash 1. It reduces physical cover. So the grenade is like another very viable sidearm option. But you'll notice that it's got this here may not reload, and it costs 1 munition. So what this means is that cost 1 munition means you must spend a munition to attack with this weapon. And may not reload means that once you've spent your 3 munition, you can't reload until you go back to your spaceship and rearm from your armory or something like that. So it's basically a 3-use weapon. And you notice it's nothing fancy in terms of its D6s, and its range is really short. So you're probably going to want to run with it, or sighted shot focus to like throw it further. Good endurance damage, but then it's got its whopping crit damage 5. So this weapon is fantastic in a couple of situations. So one is splash is really good against henchmen, like groups of enemies, because it applies its damage to every single model, and henchmen share an endurance pool. So let's say you deal 5 endurance damage and you hit 3 henchman bodies. That's 15 endurance damage to the entire henchman group. And crit 5 is heavy damage. So average armor is 3, so this means it's doing 2 attribute damage, which is big. So you're either gonna, I normally recommend, if you're not aiming for a group of enemies, is to throw a grenade at a target without endurance. Because if you attack an enemy, this thing has no boost to its strong hit chances. It's only rolling 3 dice. It requires munitions to throw, so you're not spending munitions to gain +1 d6. So there's a good chance you attack your enemy, you don't roll a strong hit, so you deal no critical hit. But if they got 0 endurance, it means you deal an automatic critical hit. And if you do roll a strong hit, you can crit boost to increase that crit damage to like 6 or more. Okay? This means grenades, great finisher weapon to pop off that really tough opponent once he's worn down, once your friends with their SMGs and shotguns have worn them down, or as like there's a cluster of henchmen, opportune moment to take a whack at them. Okay. Combo grenade launcher is fairly similar to a grenade, except that it's not sidearm, it's not quite as accurate, but it's got better range, and it's got the mounted keyword. And what this means is it's attached to another weapon. So let's say you've got an assault rifle with a mounted grenade launcher. It means you don't need to draw it, it's out, you can just pop. As long as your assault rifle's out, you just shoot with the grenade launcher. So it's just a bit more of an accessible option for a grenade. Okay, next one is the blaster. Okay, so this is 2d6 hit, which is really low, plus 5 to hit. So it means it's an accurate weapon, but it's not going to be causing many strong hits because it's only rolling 2 dice. Okay range, good endurance, really good endurance damage with 4 crit. It can be a gun or a shell. No keywords. Again, this is the basic heavy arms weapon. So it's like a big, chunky rifle. Next one here is it's also worth noting, like, endurance damage base of 3 is pretty big. So if you've got like the right variation, you could add to it, increase that to 4, and if you've got 4 focus, you can easily be doing 8 endurance damage, which is massive. I think my last character was shooting around an antimatter blaster with like 9 endurance damage. That was excellent at shredding your opponents, but I was never causing strong hits on opponents, and I only started chipping away at them once they're worn down. Cannon. Okay. Cannon is one of the first true heavy weapons, in that it's quite restrictive, in that it costs 3 resources just as a base, but it comes with splash. Unfortunately, it costs munitions to attack, and it's not particularly accurate, but it deals excellent endurance damage and crit damage 5. So this is your big shooter. As an early level character, you're not going to probably take a cannon, but for a mid-tier character, a cannon could be, it's an exotic choice, just because it's not that accurate, so you're going to be scattering a lot, so the attacks are probably going to like blasting behind your opponent, not that accurate, but when you do hit, fantastic. So it's a big RNG sort of weapon. So if you like living on the edge, a cannon's a good choice. And it can just fit some character concepts. Like sometimes you want to be a big bruiser with a cannon, because it's fun. Okay, the next one here is the other true heavy weapon, which is the machine gun. So this thing, 3d6, really low range, okay endurance damage, crit 4, restrictively it costs 3 resources, and it's a lot like the submachine gun in that it's got munition boost. So if you spend munitions on this thing, so this one adds 2d6 to your attack. So you increase that to spend 1 munition is going to add 3 dice, so this will be a 66 weapon. You're not going to be missing, and if you stand with sighted shot, you'll be increasing that range nicely. But if you start trying to do snapshot with this thing, you're going to start having problems. Now, but the big thing with the machine gun, because you're like, well, what's that? What does it do to justify that 3 resource cost, except for being a crit 4 SMG? The reason is it's got this. Attacks are also applied to the first non-adjacent intervening character, as if triples were rolled in addition to your target. So what this means is that you aim for a target, and if there's another opponent, a character between you and that target, your attack is applied to both of them. So this means you can actually be hitting 2 people at once if you line it up right. So when you're fighting an SMG, don't stack behind each other, spread horizontally. And that means if so you roll once and then you apply that attack as if it was rolled directly to 2. So if you do a critical hit, you gotta do a critical hit to both. You're gonna do your endurance damage to both those targets. So me as a GM, I love giving my bosses machine guns. Just very fun. Weird, slightly strange, but very fun. Rolling lots of dice, hitting multiple people. You counter them by your positioning. Okay. Now let's jump into tactical. So I'm going to skip forward just a little bit with a couple of these just because they're very, very specific. So trap is a very character specific sort of weapon. So it does cost munitions and you can't reload it. So it's basically a 3-use weapon. And you notice it's crit 5 with 46 attack. So it's got very nice stats. But the way that it works is you effectively place it somewhere until a trigger happens. So it could be like the C4 you're putting somewhere, or a bear trap you're laying on the ground. So it's kind of narrative weapon. And you'll notice that by the little book icon next to it. So if you're a very clever player, trap is a good choice. If you're a person who loves to think outside of the box and you really often engage your opponents with preparation, trap's a good one. Not so good if the opponent gets a drop on you though. You might be able to lay it on the ground and pull back a little bit and try and lure them into it. But anyway, trap only costs 1 resource, so it's very easy to acquire. Next one is we're going to look at the 2 companion choices. So this is assistant and squad. So these are characters. Okay, I won't go into the full companion rules, but in a nutshell, the way that companions work. So they're different than Fragged Empire 1. In Fragged Empire 2, when you perform an action, you can give any part of that action to your companion. So let's say you did snapshot, would let you move and shoot. You could take the move and then give the shoot to your companion. So if you want, you can actually not attack at all and just let your companion do all the attacking. So assistant is your one character so it's got bodies 1 here, and it's got, okay stats. Companions gain plus endurance damage and plus 1 hit dice per attacking body. So this is really 3d6 with 2 endurance damage. So it's a very solid sort of weapon. And it's got durability too, so it's a little bit tougher. The next one is a squad. So this one costs 3. And this actually comes with 3 bodies. So this is like a 5d6 attack. And it's just like rolling a lot more dice. And also the companions, it's only got durability 1. But because there's 3 bodies, that means it's going to take a while for your opponent to take them out. And companions can get pretty strange in terms of the variations that they can take. So let's see if I can, flick over here. Okay, so this here's your companion variations. So they could be turrets or holographic or melee, or maybe a sniper, or you make maybe you've got an enslaved echo ghost, or maybe a Farron. So a character I always had in mind is to play a young Twyfar teenager who hasn't yet bonded to their Farron, and the Farron that they're friends with is sort of floating around them as a companion. So anyway, so that's what you can do with the companion, and your choice of variation is very important with the companion. That adds a huge amount of flavor, as opposed to a gun, which might be just a little bit of hit here, a little bit of range here, slightly different damage, maybe a special rule. Companions have, like, a turret is completely different to, you know, a sniper or a melee, like a Nephilim horror or something like that. Okay, so that's them. Next one here, so you got another strange weapon here, fire support. So it's got splash 2 with lock on. It gains extra d6 to hit. Only costs 1. With solid, okay stats, low hit dice. So you're really wanting to lock onto your opponent. But what this weapon is basically you calling in fire support. So maybe your spaceship is like launching an attack, an artillery shot, or you're calling into HQ to send like a space laser down or something like that. So it's going to be very, again, circumstantial as to when it's effective. So if you're in a cave, digging down through an ancient ruin, probably not that useful. If you're out in the open, this thing's great for bombarding a large area. But again, it's a very flavorful weapon. It only costs 1, but it's a sort of thing if you wanted to represent that with your character. Combo alt fire. So this is the other big sidearm choice here. So this is basically very solid stats, 3d6 to hit, okay range, and okay damage, crit 4, only costs 1, so sidearm, that would drop that down to 0. But what this is, it could be gun or shell, it's got the mounted keyword, so this means it's part of another weapon. So this is like an alternative way of firing your gun. So maybe it's like the old Unreal Tournament where you shoot like a normal big laser beam, but then you right click to shoot a big bubble of plasma or something like that. And that's very handy. So your primary weapon's variation might be like an endurance damage dealer, but then the variation on alt fire might be like a crit damage booster, so like a finisher off of your opponent. And the big thing with alt fire is that when this weapon or the main weapon reloads, the other one gains 1 munition. So you like reload one, the other gains a little boost, and you reload the other, the first one gains a boost. So it's like a little tweak there, so it's good for that. Okay, now we start jumping into the arcane weapons. So there's a set of 4 of these. So arcane weapons represent weird powers. So they could represent everything from you're like a hacker, or it could be like psychic mind attacks, or some sort of alien weapon, or maybe you're a biotech scientist throwing goop at people, or maybe you're a tactician. You don't even have a gun. You're like giving advice. Okay, it represents all of that sort of ethereal sort of options here. And you'll notice it's got this little picture here. This little icon means mix it up. So that means it's a very odd weapon. All of these arcanes are. And you notice that all of the arcanes have fairly average stats with only 3 crit damage. But often they're good at applying strong hits. So I'm going to deal with all 4 of these arcane weapons at once, because their stats don't vary a huge amount. It's pretty much all in the keywords here. So Patient Power has gain 1 strong hit at the end of every turn. So this means after turn 1, strong hit 5 or 6. After turn 2, 4, 5 or 6. So this weapon gets stronger the longer the fight. It's also worth noting that arcane weapons all apply lock-on. And lock-on is an effect that's applied to an opponent, and some weapons gain bonuses versus locked on. So for example, the fire support has plus 1d6 hit, and there's lots of weapon mods that add little boosts there. Okay, so Patient Power, good for long fights. Controlled Power. So this one doesn't have as good base stats as Patient Power, but it just comes out of the bat, strong hit, 4, 5, 6. Okay? this thing's a beast in terms of causing strong hits. You are never going to roll this thing without rolling one strong hit pretty much. But it doesn't have the most accurate things, so you might be spending munitions on this attack a little bit more often. The other two arcanes down here under exotic. So raw power, so this is the sidearm choice. Okay, so if you're wanting to tinker in this sort of thing. So it has no good boost to strong hits, unlike the others, which is a substantial drawback to this weapon, but it does deal good endurance damage. So it's a painful little thing, but it's good for doing the special effects. And we'll jump into the arcane variations in a second. Wild power, so its thing is that it has splash 2, which is, that's a massive area. So this thing is good at like dealing lots of like hitting multiple people all at once. Okay, so let's have a look at the arcane variations, and you'll start to understand. So this is a lot more where the interesting stuff for arcane weapons lie. Okay, so the first one here, and you'll notice they've all got multiple names. This is because I'm trying to nudge the reader in the direction of what this thing could be, because this arcane option could be lots of different things. It's really narratively dependent, and the Fragged rules want to give you lots of options. So feel free to name anything. Okay. So this one is a shield. So we'll just go with the first name. So all shield. So this one has a strong hit option. It grants you cover. Okay. So this is less of a weapon and more like a utility option. Enhance zone. So this comes with splash, but its thing is until the end of combat, the splash area grants you and all allies +1 hit and endurance damage, and all enemies -1 hit and endurance damage stacks. So this is like you're trying to set up like a specific zone that you want to be very defensive. You can kind of target it, and then it starts giving a big tactical advantage to allies that are sitting into it. And if the opponents get up close in your face, it gives them a penalty. Okay, next one here. This is a bit more of a standard weapon. So this is Infect, and it applies the burn strong hit to opponents. So it kind of hits that the slight damage over time onto people. Okay, the next one here is Intimidate. So this one's a little bit strange. So this is the use of a skill. So, and this could represent like a roar, or maybe you're showing off you're like do a flip in the air and swish your swords around to show that you're a master of some sort of skill. So the target's defense is always 12 plus their resolve, so rather than normal defense, which is very odd. And its strong hit is mastery, that allows you to perform a skill roll, i.e. stealth to slip away, leadership to roar, biotech to show off your fancy weapons, and deal +1 endurance damage if you succeed. So this one has crit damage blank, which quite a few arcane weapons do. So you can't kill anyone, but you can deal endurance damage with it. And it allows you to do skill rolls. So this is a good way of dealing damage and stealthing or stuff like that. So if you're the sort of character that likes to make skill rolls mid-combat, this is a great weapon for you. Okay, Mock. So it allows decoy, so all damaged characters suffer a strong hit -1 on the next attack if they don't attack you. So it's basically baiting people in. Restrain lets you inhibit people so they have negatives to their rolls. Tactical Computer, this is a great one. Advise, an ally may immediately move 2 spaces and gain strong hit +1, so you can give sort of buffs to your allies' next attack. And Trick lets you give strong hit control. All damaged characters, the next action must be one of your choice. So you can say their next action must be a prep action or something like that. A non-attack or something like that. Anyway, So yeah, okay. So that's a real quick look at arcane weapons. To give you so if you're the sort of person that really likes that sort of thinking outside the box, and you don't want to be a person with a traditional gun, arcane's a great choice. Okay. Melee weapons, we're going to do all three of these at once, again, because their stats are all fairly standard. You'll notice they've got crit 3, that can be modified. And the reason for that, so all of them are sidearms. So these can basically be like a standard melee weapon, a blade, a thrown melee weapon, or a bayonet, so you attach it to your gun and you can do stuff with it. And under the melee variations, we won't go all through them. There's some there that increase your crit damage up to 4 fairly easily. There's also a modification that removes sidearm to give you additional boosts again. And so what this means is the base idea for a melee weapon is that it's a sidearm. It's a backup weapon. But if you want to specialize in sidearm and make it your primary, you can by being like a martial artist, and that will boost its crit damage easily up to 4, and if you're really good, up to 5. Okay, so that's melee weapons. The next one here is prototype. So prototype, they have not the best stats here, okay? So field prototypes are sidearm, and they're okay to hit. They're no special strong hit boosts, and low and medium crit damage. And their costs are 2 and 3, which are pretty high. The reason for this is because prototypes come with gun and shell, which means you can take a gun variation and a shell variation. So this means, but not only can you apply the 2 variations to the weapon, you can then apply gun modifications and shell modifications. So this is the sort of weapon that you want to take if you're the person who likes to spend your spare time points to modify your gun. Okay? You can tinker with these things and they get quite beastie. Okay, so that is all of the base weapons. Trying to give you a bit of a glimpse into some of the depth of these to help you make your selections. But let's now quickly have a look at homebrewing. Okay, so in Fragged 2nd edition, I'm just checking the other page. Yep, okay. So in Fragged 2, and again, the disclaimer, I'm working on the graphic design, so it's not quite as pretty as it will be. Okay, so I've got this double-page spread talking about homebrewing. So here, just sort of giving you an explanation, a list of the optional rules that are spread throughout the book, and then it's got basically some information to help GMs make their own creations. So if you want to do make your own species, or customize your own spacecraft build, creating a new trait, or if you want to make some combat equipment. So when making your weapons, you pretty much think about it this way. Okay, so plus hit is not particularly strong, but the things that are strong is crit damage and strong hit chance. So the number one thing you want to avoid is a weapon with high crit and high strong hit chance. So generally, they'll have one of these. So for example, the cannon, you're rolling 3d6. That's not a good strong hit chance, but crit 5. Okay, so strong crit chance. But then you've got SMGs, which are rolling lots and lots of dice, so at least 6 and can easily get up to 7, but crit 3. So they are balanced the other way. The average weapon is the assault rifle, which is 4d6, crit 4. So it's considered medium. Okay? The other thing is you wanting to balance out. So often if a weapon has low crit damage, it might deal good endurance damage. Like, give a weapon a purpose. So is this an accurate weapon? Is it an endurance damage weapon? Is it a strong hit weapon? and also considering its type. So guns are often more accurate, shells are often more damagey, arcane, not crit damage, but like weird special effects. If you're giving something lock on, so often think about that as about half the strength. I know I'm jumping all over the place here a little bit, but I'm just wanting to give you an idea of some of this stuff to consider. And I'm going to zoom out here just a little bit so you can pause the video and have a read of this if you'd like. Hopefully it's clear enough. And if you have specific questions, post them up in the chat channel or on the Discord page. I love seeing people's custom creations. The other thing to keep in mind when creating your weapon is how it scales in terms of damage. So this is, for example, something that I've done when I'm balancing out weapons, is having a look at how they, in terms, the damage of that weapon goes up. So this is, for example, a balancing out a pistol and an assault rifle versus a blade and an arc. Blade with the arc fire variation. And I just kind of do a lot of these to sort of test them out. Okay? Cool. Okay, I know that got a little bit fragmented at the end. I always struggle really explaining out how to homebrew stuff, because Fragged is not a points-based system. You can't just say, well, plus hit is worth 0.025, range is worth plus 0.5, endurance damage is +1, crit damage is +5 points. You can't do that with Fragged, because Fragged, a lot of it is about the interlocking systems. Okay, so as we talked about before, it might deal lots of crit damage, but its chance of dealing critical hit is low, and you're kind of balancing out all these different considerations. Cool. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. Cool. Take care.